Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for listening. Thank you for downloading. And thank you for subscribing to the latest edition of the 12 Kyle podcast. I am your boy, 12 Kyle. I want to thank you all for tuning in as you do each and every week. Shout out to those of you who are watching on YouTube as well as Spotify. Man, check this out. So the other day, I was having a conversation with the homie Eclectic. Shout out to E. That's my boy. We go way back, especially in this podcast game. True veterans of the podcast era. And we were talking about, just how things were in the 80s. And he's got a brand new dope podcast called Before Everything Changed. Make sure that you check that out. He dropped new episodes pretty much every week. You can find it on all streaming platforms, but it's a very nostalgistic type of podcast. And he literally and figuratively talks about before everything changed, before, when life was a whole lot more simpler than it is now. Nonetheless, the conversation got me to thinking about, like, I really, really miss the 80s. Shout out to the homie Baylor, BTG for President, and Open Run with BTG or his podcast. On his podcast, he talks about the 80s a lot as well. But Baylor, the difference is Baylor was born in 82. I was born in 72. So I'm a 70s baby, raised in the 80s, made in the 90s. And the thing that I think the three of us, myself, Eclectic, and Baylor, all can appreciate is just really how dope the 80s were. And based on the conversations that I've had with Bale over the last couple of weeks, and obviously the conversation that Eclectic and I had the other day, and I think it's something Eclectic may even mention on one of his episodes, it just got me thinking, like, what are the things that I miss about the 80s? And I came up with 12 things. There's a lot of things that I miss about the 80s, but I'm going to give you 12. Um, and these are in no particular order. Number one, trips to McDonald's. I know that sounds crazy, but like in the 80s, going to McDonald's was a thing. It didn't happen every day. I mean, now we're a little spoiled because, if you want, you can have Chipotle for lunch. You can have McDonald's, you can have Burger King, you can have Wendy's, even though Wendy's isn't what it used to be. I mean, the fries aren't as good as they used to be, and Burger King's fries aren't that good at all. But, they still got good burgers, and Wendy's still has great burgers, and I can go on and on. But there was a point in time in my life where I ate burgers from McDonald's, and McDonald's was the joint. Like, you would be excited as a kid growing up when if your mom said, "Okay, we're eating McDonald's tonight." I mean, like, that was really truly a treat because it didn't happen every day. Now, you can go to McDonald's for breakfast. You can go to McDonald's for lunch. You can go to McDonald's for dinner. You can go to McDonald's anytime you want. You see the golden arches over a quadrillion, trillion, billion people sold. Everybody and their mama has eaten at McDonald's at least once in their lifetime. I mean, it's a staple in America. Let me just put it like that. But it was a treat. And I mean, back in the day, you didn't go to Mickey D's. It was you felt special when your mom or dad said, "Hey, we're going to McDonald's." That honestly, looking back on it, before I became like maybe a teenager when I had access to a car, man, going to McDonald's, that might happen once a month, if that. And we used to travel a lot with my family. And so the one thing that I always looked forward to in traveling is that you knew that you were going to go to McDonald's on the way to New Jersey. We lived in South Carolina. Family was in New Jersey. And that's where I was born. Um, and so that's where we lived briefly before we moved to South Carolina. So I have a lot of family. So we'd get on the highway and go up I-95. And so I knew that at some point we were going to stop at McDonald's. So that was always a big thing. But, I mean, like, after a while, it just, it's not the same. But in the 80s, McDonald's was everything. Um, Number two, things that I miss about the 80s. Um, Summer vacations. Summer vacations were so dope. And here's the great thing about summer vacations. You didn't necessarily have to go anywhere because when school ended, unless someone lived in your neighborhood, you weren't going to see your friends until school started the following year. Unless somebody went to your church or you happened to see them in the mall or something like that. Most of my friends didn't live in my neighborhood. I mean, I had a lot of friends in my neighborhood, but the ones that didn't, no, I didn't. You saw them the last day of school, and then you saw them again. You might catch them when your mom was signing you up for school. But for the most part, you didn't see it. So the summer was, you had a huge window of a couple of months, and you didn't need to go anywhere because everything that you needed happened outside. What was happening outside? Every single thing. We'd be playing football, basketball, baseball. We'd walk through the woods, which, in South Carolina really wasn't that safe. Not that something could happen to you, but I mean, like, I grew up in Florence, South Carolina, and I'll be honest, there were probably a lot of snakes in the woods that we walked through. And, we didn't really pay no attention. I mean, you always would look for snakes, but, and occasionally you'd come up on one. But for the most part, we didn't walk in fear. It wasn't like anybody's going to do a drive by. um, but yeah, the summer trips to New Jersey were always dope because I love going back to New Jersey, Newark, New Jersey, to be more specific. That's where I was born, and that's where my family's from, or at least my dad's side. But yeah, I mean, all the games that we would play outside, watching girls double dutch, jump rope, which was always weird because like watching girls do double dutch, like I never could understand how they would be able to jump in. It's one thing if you start and they just start twirling the rope, but to be able to jump in, eh, I always thought that was dope. I have no idea how they did that. Um, Another thing too that happened when we were in New Jersey, seeing kids turn the fire hydrants on, which I at the time I didn't know was illegal. Because I mean, look, if it's 95 degrees and we're outside and you're in Newark, New Jersey, what else are you gonna do besides turn the fire hydrants on? Um, and your only job in the summertime every day was to have fun. And no 2 days were the same. You did everything different each time that you went outside. And so, and the summer vacations, relatively speaking, seemed to be very small as far as time was concerned. So you had all day, and we literally were outside from sun up to sundown, or when the street lights came on, whichever came first. And you didn't want to go inside because if you went inside to get lunch or something like that, your mom would tell you to stay in the house. So we were outside. We really and truly were outside. Um, but yeah, very little time was spent in the house during the summertime. And that's one of the things I miss about the 80s. Um, Number three, the obvious Saturday morning cartoons. Man, listen, Saturday morning cartoons were the best. In fact, I did an episode on another person's podcast, and I still have that saved. I said I was going to go back and just launch it as a podcast for myself. I'm going to do that because y'all need to hear this. And that episode, it might be 10, 15 minutes at the most, but it's a really dope episode. Um, you would wake up on Saturday mornings and, you get your cereal. Shout out to the cereal. Well, first and foremost, I have a question. When you got up to watch cartoons on Saturday mornings, what was the cereal of choice that you had? I mean, shout out to Frosted Flakes, shout out to Captain Crunch, shout out to Fruit Loops, Apple Jacks, Rice Krispies, uh, Sugar Pops, Fruity Pebbles, Raisin Bran. I love Raisin Bran. People sleep on Raisin Bran. Raisin Bran is pretty good. And some people ate King Vitamin, which was like a bootleg Captain Crunch. Um, but long story short, like my brother, my young brother and I, we'd lay our blankets on the floor, get our cereal, and we'd literally park ourselves in front of the TV on Saturday mornings. And we would watch cartoons until like noon, until like Soul Train came on or something like that. But it was always dope, man. And it's funny, you could easily get up early on Saturday mornings to watch cartoons, but you couldn't get up during the week, to watch scratch that. It's funny. We would wake up without an alarm or an adult to watch cartoons on Saturday mornings at like 6 a.m. But during the week, to get up for school, we couldn't wake up. Go figure. But yeah, watching cartoons like Super Friends, Bugs Bunny. I hated the Smurfs. My brother Damon loved the Smurfs. I hated the Smurfs. The Smurfs was so whack. But yeah, Bugs Bunny, not to be confused with Bad Bunny, or as my dad calls him, Big Bunny. Fat Albert and the Cosby Kids. And like I said, the day would usually end with us watching Soul Train, and then in the late afternoons you'd get wrestling, not wrestling, but wrestling. And of course, like I said, Soul Train, the hippest trip in America with Don Cornelius. Great times, man. Great times. Number 4, going to church. I missed that about the 80s. And be clear, I go to church now, but going to church back then was different, man, because at church I got a chance to see people that I didn't go to school with. So I had friends like my boy Jay Fresh. And I've talked about this before. Jay Fresh and I have known each other since we've been friends since like we've been 6 years old. We've literally been friends since we were 6 years old. But we didn't go to the same school. So church was the only time that we could hang out. And I just love how we would get together, get in church and cut up and be talking and, doing all kind of mischievous things. And it was interesting because Jay Fresh's dad was a pastor, and sometimes he would preach at he didn't have a church. He didn't preach at the church that we went to, but he would, sometimes come and guest preach, or sometimes he'd come and sit in the pulpit or whatever. And we'd be in the back of the church, man, just cutting up. And you know what they say about preachers' kids. But yeah, and there was always that one lady who had to, turn around and tell you to hush. And you couldn't open no peppermints and stuff like that in church. You couldn't eat candy in church, but we managed to sneak and do it anyway. But it was always dope, man. And then when we got to be a little bit older, singing in the choir was dope. I did that in the 80s. That's where I first started to, develop my love for singing in church. And that was interesting because I came from a family of singers. When I tell you everybody in my family could sing, with the exception of my Uncle Harry. Everybody else, his siblings, my mom, my aunts, my uncles, everybody could sing. And, so I came from a singing family. So when the opportunity presented itself for me, for a young 12, to get in the youth choir, I was there. You know what I mean? So it was always dope, man. Shout out to my home church, Mount Zion African Methodist Episcopal Church, AME. That's the church that I grew up in Florence, South Carolina. Number 5, again, in no particular order. One of the main things that I miss about the 80s was having prime Prince and prime Michael Jackson. And it's interesting because when you think about it, Prince released Dirty Mind in 1980. In 1981, he released Controversy. In 1982, he released 1999. And then in 1984, he released Purple Rain, right? In 85, he came back with Around the World in a Day. 86, he released Parade. In 87, he released Sign O' the Times. In 88, he released Love Sexy. And in 89, he released Batman. Prince's run in the 80s was dominant. You don't have to like Prince. You don't have to love Prince. That's my guy, right? Look at that list of albums that I ran off to. Prince was in his prime in the 80s, and it was undeniable. He was arguably one of the greatest artists ever. He's my personal favorite artist of all time, any genre of music. But you got prime Prince in the 80s. Conversely, you got prime Michael Jackson in the 80s as well. Now, Mike didn't have as many albums as Prince in the 80s. In fact, Mike only had 2. Thriller in 82 and Bad in 87. Well, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure out that based on what the success that he had, he didn't have to release an album. He really could have retired after Thriller. And I tell people all the time, like, Bad is a phenomenal album. Go back and listen to it. It's not, I mean, like, the problem with Bad was that it wasn't Thriller. And the reality is he never could have duplicated Thriller again anyway, even if he tried. But I thoroughly enjoyed Prime Michael, Prime Prince. And I don't, there's no debate between the two, Baylor, because I hear you right now, Baylor, talking to your speakers as I'm speaking to you. There's no debate between Mike and Prince. I mean, they're both great, and one's the greatest of all time. I mean, it is what it is. Number 6, again, no particular order. One of the things I miss about the '80s, the Walkman and the boombox. More specifically when it comes to rap music, because rap music was still in its infancy. It wasn't even called hip hop in the '80s. And a couple of ways that I think rap took off, it was ushered in because we got a chance to hear a lot of rap on the street from the boombox. And like when you played rap music on your boombox, it had to be loud. You had to they boomboxes were nicknamed ghetto blasters, meaning like in the ghetto you had to blast your music. And that's exactly what they were. Either way, you could either listen to it on your Walkman, which was, plugged into your headphones, and it was basically your personal device for you to walk around and listen to music, or you had your boombox. Either way, you were going to get that rap music, and it was going to be dope. But everybody heard it, and those were the methods in which we listened to it. And I miss that about the '80s as well. Next up, number 7. MTV played videos, and BET was black in the '80s, and I miss that. I've talked about it on here before. MTV was truly music television. We got cable in our house in 1981, and my favorite channel, honestly, became MTV, which was interesting because I know maybe the first 8 months or so, we didn't even have BET. BET wasn't even offered in our cable package. But man, I would sit and watch MTV. I would watch videos on MTV all the time, from Bon Jovi to Twisted Sister to The Police to Men at Work to Rick James, who was mad because he wanted to be on MTV even more. Prince, Lionel Richie. There weren't a lot of black acts on MTV, but I had a different appreciation for music at the time, and eventually MTV would move along and then make way for rap, and something by the name of Yo MTV Raps came on the scene, and by that time I was hooked. Like from Fab Five Freddy to Dr. Dre and Ed Lover, Yo MTV Raps became a staple in my house every single day. And long before that, conversely, BET was black entertainment television to the fullest. I've done an episode on BET as well. And I want to say we got BET probably 82, late 82, maybe 80, start of 83. But yeah, the being able to see videos was a game changer. And I mean, who could forget Video Soul with Donnie Simpson? I did an episode about that. Caribbean, what is it? Caribbean Sands, Caribbean something with Rachel, Caribbean Vibrations. I think that was the name of it. But like I said, Video Soul, the Video Soul Countdown, the Unseen VJ, Alvin something. I can't remember Alvin's last name. And then of course, Rap City. Shout out to the mayor, Prince Dejour, Big Les, Big Tigger. Man, listen, and then eventually Joe Claire. Great times, man. Great times, great memories. Another thing that I missed about the '80s, number 8, the NBA was fantastic. That was actually the slogan. The NBA is fantastic. The NBA, many people know this, and so what I'm about to tell you, you probably already heard it, but then there's some young people that don't know this. The NBA was literally and figuratively on their last leg in 1979. Um, the finals were being played, and they were being played on tape delay. I remember as a young kid um, watching an NBA game, and I remember distinctly like the 6 o'clock news came on, and they go through the news, and at the end of the 6 o'clock news, there would be the sports. And the sports anchor would come on and he said, well, hey, turn away from your TV. We're about to show you the score to the Lakers and the Trailblazers game. And what he meant by that was because as soon as the news went off, they were going to play it on tape delay. And they didn't want you to see the score because they wanted you to watch the game. Because guess what? If you saw that the Trailblazers won, you're probably not going to sit and watch it for the next 2 hours on tape delay to see that game. And so I remember seeing that. And, but the NBA they were struggling. And in 79, guy by the name of Urgent Magic Johnson came to the league along with Larry Joe Bird, and the rest was history. Lakers versus Celtics was the 80s. I mean, they met in the finals. What was it, 5 times? Was it 5 times? I think it was 5 times. But Magic and Bird literally and figuratively saved the NBA. But like I said, like you had players from everywhere, Magic, you had Bird, you had Kareem Abdul-Jabbar, players like Moses Malone, Hakeem Olajuwon, Isaiah Thomas, Dr. J, the legend, Dominique Wilkins, Iceman, Gervin, Charles Barkley, Clyde Drexler, Bernard King, who else? Robert Parrish, Kevin McHale, James Worthy, Adrian Dantley, just to name a few. And of course, this little skinny kid in Chicago that wore number 23. He turned out to be okay. In fact, he turned out to be the greatest of all time. But he didn't get to the league until 1984. And but the league was saved because of Magic and Bird, and we have a lot to thank them, and the late Commissioner David Stern as well. But yeah, in the 80s, the NBA was fantastic. I love watching the NBA. I still love watching the NBA today, but it's different. I mean, I'm a Hawks fan, so I watch my Hawks, but how the game is played is different. It was just different. Number 9, arcades. I truly miss the arcades because, and Eclectic made a good point. I think he mentioned this on his podcast. In the 80s, the arcade was the only place where you could go to play video games. A lot of people couldn't afford video games. So until the prices came down on ColecoVision, Nintendo, and Atari and all of that good stuff, you had to go to the arcades to play, especially if you wanted to play against somebody. Now if you were just playing by yourself, then that's one thing. But if you wanted to see some competition, you had to, go to the arcade. And for us, it was Magnolia Mall. I talked about it on the Magnolia Mall episode. We go to Magnolia Mall, man, and we would be in there what felt like for days. And you might have $10 to play. If you got $10, I could probably make $10 stretch for like 6 hours. I would be in there playing for as long as I could. And all of the games that come to mind back then, from Pac-Man, Miss Pac-Man, Space Invaders, Donkey Kong, Galaga, Frogger, Pole Position, Outrun, Asteroids, Joust, just to name a few. I mean, like I literally could go on and on. But shout out to ColecoVision, and big shout out to the Atari 2600. I still say to this day, getting the Atari 2600 in 1984 for Christmas, best Christmas gift ever. It'll never be topped. Number 11, Blockbuster. Having a Blockbuster night was everything. Blockbuster was a a craze and a movement that I know we'll never see again, but the ability to have the ability to go and get your favorite movie or go get a movie that you've never seen before that maybe you didn't see in the movie theater or you couldn't see at a particular time, and you get to rent that movie and you can watch it as many times as you want. You got 3 days, you gotta take it back, and you gotta make sure you rewind the tape before you take it back. Um, it was a game changer. It truly was a game changer. Um, it's funny because I remember Blockbuster was if you had a Blockbuster card, in some way, shape, or form, it was almost like having a MasterCard, like an American Express. Yeah, your Blockbuster card was treated like Amex for real. Um, I miss those days. I miss, being able to rent a movie and sit and watch a movie with your friends or your family. Um, Number 11, uh, rap music. I miss the rap music of the 80s. And partly because that's where I fell in love with rap and then subsequently what became hip hop. Um, my journey with rap started with three brothers out of Queens, Joseph, Daryl, and Jason, otherwise known as Run DMC and Jam Master Jay. I'd heard rap music long before I heard Run DMC in 83, 84. But of course I heard, Sugar Hill Gang and I heard The Message, and The Message was a dope song. But it wasn't until I heard, Run DMC's first tape. And once I got that tape, I was hooked. Like I never wanted to be a rapper, but I always wanted to be cool like Run DMC. And to me, those dudes were cooler than cool. And so subsequently they became my favorite group and it just took off from there. But from Run DMC to LL Cool J, Curtis Blow, the Fat Boys, Salt and Pepper, um, I mean, just to name a few. And I mean, who could forget the greatest year in hip hop was the year of 1988. There'll be more to come on the Rap Soul podcast about that. But yeah, I love and miss that about the 80s because rap music in the 80s was just different. To some degree, you had to be there. I'm not telling you you couldn't go back or you can't go back and listen to it now, but you just had to be there. And the last thing that I miss about the 80s was, everybody knew you and you knew everybody. And there was a sense of community. I think now, well, I know now there's not really a sense of community like that, but you know, back then, if you left your house, if you went down the street, the lady down the street, Miss Johnson, she knew you, so you couldn't get in any trouble. And if you got in any trouble, Miss Johnson could reprimand you. Miss Jones across the street could reprimand you. Mister Brown from around the corner could reprimand you, or could spank you if you weren't old enough. And it was a sense of community. And people looked out for each other. Your next door neighbor might come over to borrow a cup of sugar, which I don't know how you borrow a cup of sugar, but they would do that. There were some neighbors who would share clothes, but it was just a sense of community where everybody stuck together, particularly in our communities. Um, it's not like that now, and I miss that about the 80s. Um, I can't really tell you where it went. There's a lot of contributing factors that led to that. More importantly, I mean, the family was disrupted. This family structure was disrupted, obviously because of, in a lot of ways because of lack of employment, drugs, crack, more specifically. So there were systematic things that kept us from being what we once were. But all in all, the 80s were dope. I mean, the 80s were the shit. If you missed it, you just missed it. But if you did miss it, you can listen to this podcast and hopefully I've given you enough to reminisce and you feel a whole lot better about what you missed because it was definitely a time to be alive. Ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do it for me. Thanks again for checking out this edition of the 12 Kyle podcast. Be sure to subscribe to the podcast. We drop new episodes every Thursday. Also, don't forget about our other podcast. It's called the Rap Soul Podcast. That is the podcast where we talk about music and artists from the 80s, the 90s, and the 2000s when it comes to rap, hip hop, soul, and R&B. Simply put, folks, it's the best music podcast that you have never heard. So make sure that you check that out. Also, we have merch. Check out the description box. Click that link, and there you can buy 12 Kyle Podcast t-shirts, hoodies, as well as coffee mugs. We got it for the low. That's going to do it for me. Ladies and gentlemen, thanks again for checking out this edition of the 12 Kyle Podcast. I am your boy, 12 Kyle. I'll catch you guys next time. 5,000. Cheers.